Well, good afternoon. Thank you. I'm James Nace, and I'm down at Sinai Hospital down in Baltimore, where I serve as the Vice Chair and the Fellowship Director for our Joint Reconstruction Program. I want to thank our research fellows here that helped put together some of these slides, and also thank MicroPort for the opportunity. They tasked me with a very specific topic, and this is returning to activities of daily living and comparing a medial pivot design versus a single radius design. Here are my disclosures. Most of which are I'm disclosing that I do all medial pivot knees, but I'm involved in a lot of research and peer review as well. Here's the outline. So we want to kind of look at the past. What are the definitions of ADLs in the past, and how does that change from what they are now? I think that definition alone is different. We've done a lot of the literature review already, but I'll do a little bit of that as well. And then mostly speak briefly, we have a prospective study currently going on at Sinai in Baltimore with a gait lab. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So where do we come from? Pretty rudimentary parts here, right? I mean, we talked about the door hinge. The knee's not a door hinge, and that's what it looked like back then. Where are we going? Well, we have 88-year-olds training for marathons now. She's not just worried about her KOOS score of how she can put her shoes on. So we have to realize that to meet expectations, we have to understand the knee. And I think the 6 degrees of freedom of motion are one of those things. And this has been a big task for me to chase these 15 or 20% of patients that we've all been chasing. Here's my early experience. So I never saw a CR knee in training. We did all PS knees. Went to fellowship, never saw a PS knee, did all CR knees. Never did I see a medial pivot knee. So this is what I did for my first 7 years in practice. I thought the x-rays looked great. Single radius knee, cemented, mechanical alignment, looked good. And for the most part, I was happy with this, except those few patients that just tortured me and themselves. So this is my later experience over the last 5 years, definitely different. Kinematic flare here, press fit, and medial pivot. So to talk about single radius and ADLs, need a little background of where we've come from. And when you look at the literature, when we were training, it was, did you do PS or a CR knee? Now we have all these different things. Did you do a medial congruent, medial pivot, PS plus, did a lip, CS? I mean, it's all over the place, right? So it's no longer so easy to compare apples to apples. And one of the reasons why we did our study, which I'll show you at the end. Radii of curvature, we talked about this a lot, but from personal experience, doing all PS knees with a J curve of the next gen, I thought I was pretty slick as a resident, where I could pop in a little poly and 30 degrees of flexion. Didn't even need a retractor in. I could just pop that in and look pretty slick, but that's really a detriment of the design. I mean, there was a little bit of mid-flexion instability there, and that's why I could do that. So when I came to fellowship to the single radius CR knee, I couldn't do that anymore, and I think that's a consequence of design. With the medial pivot, with the MicroPort knee, we have this spherical design, and we've reviewed this ad nauseum about how that medial pivot will give you more stability and mimic that more of a regular native kinematic knee. Why does that make a difference in ADLs? Well, I think if the quadriceps is functioning more efficiently, which I think it does if the medial side is now more stable, the quadriceps can then work more efficiently, and there's been EMG testing to prove this. So instead of my initial experience where I'm putting in a single radius knee and putting it in pretty darn tight, why? Because I needed it to be stable. I think what this does is the quadriceps works more efficiently, and therefore, instead of doing all its work to make the knee stable, it does what the quadriceps is supposed to do, and that's get you out of a chair, going up and down stairs, and do the functional ADLs that we want our patients to do. So I do think the insert does facilitate kinematics. We all have, our anecdotal patients, and yeah, she did great, but this patient was our nurse on our ortho floor that I saw every day for the past 5 years that would torture me and say, hey, my knee hurts, my back hurts. I said, I just want to round, please leave me alone. But every day, and of course we tried everything. She had all the markers of a bad outcome, right? She was a nurse, she was bugging me, everything hurts. So we did everything possible conservatively to make her better, and I don't think the videos are going to play, but she had awesome range of motion, awesome gait, and did very well considering not the best of, you're going to try to get it to play? She had some risk factors, mostly of being our orthopedic nurse. So let's go and look at the literature. You know, you don't want to see videos and say, yeah, they did well. We want to look at the data and say, is there really a difference objectively? And when we looked at medial pivot versus dual radius design, this was a 40 patient cohort study. And basically, they both did pretty well, just like Dr. Backstein said. So we did see some differences in this study with the medial pivot, just a little bit quicker getting out of chairs, timed up and go. So my task again was single radius and ADLs. So let's look at the data of what single radius and ADLs look like. So another comparison study looking at all PS design knees, 45 patients in each. And again, kind of equally good results. Medial pivot did have some preference in maybe range of motion and functional outcomes, but still not overwhelming. Medial pivot versus single radius, again, now we're looking at a medial pivot, different design than microport, but with a J curve in their medial pivot, 50 patients in each cohort. Again, not a huge difference, although we did see some better motion in the medial pivot design group. One more study about 80/80 retrospective study, again, PS, looking at forgotten hip scores, and again, showing some favoritism towards the medial pivot, but difference in change in range of motion was not significant. So what's all this mean? It's like any data. I mean, anyone that works in a large center and like ourselves, you can bias the numbers and make your research prove whatever it wants, unfortunately. But all these studies kind of had a different flair. Some were PS, some had J curves. So what we wanted to do is just take, we're about 33 patients into it now, and just compare apples to apples. So we looked at a single radius CR triathlon knee with a CS insert and compare that to a medial pivot microport CS insert. So, and we wanted to make it objective, and we have one of the only gait labs on the East Coast, so we have a full gait lab. We did our gait lab analysis. We did all the functional scores, range of motion, and what we saw here is that there was favoritism towards the medial pivot. Certainly, this is early. This was under design for a long time. COVID hit, and we're only about a year follow-up. So, but I think patients really care about getting better quicker. I know we care about long-term outcomes. I agree with you, but the world we live in is in patients, and I want to be better yesterday. And we do see that timed up and go, quadriceps strengths, and KOOS scores all favored the medial pivot. So we do think that with further long-term outcomes here, we are going to show a significant difference. So in conclusion, we do feel as though the medial pivot is getting back a little bit quicker. I think because mostly that quadriceps is working more efficiently. The timed up and go and gait analyses that we're doing are looking very good and promising. So I think the data is there, especially in this study where we're comparing apples to apples, but certainly more data to come, and I look forward to presenting our 1, 3, and 5 year data in the future. Thank you.